Hey, Primary. Now, if you're anything like me, you're dreaming of being back in the Redwoods, and I miss hanging out with you guys too. Being here in my office is hardly as fun as singing songs under the trees with you crazy kids. But I know it's a weird time, and a lot of our lives have changed, and like a lot. So, some people are pretty worried about the future and what's going to happen, and um, or maybe you're different. Maybe you're just bored and sick of it all, and I totally get it. But there's one thing I really want you to know through all this, and that is simply that God is still in control. Now, the last book of the Bible, Revelation, can be pretty weird and confusing sometimes with all the beasts and dragons, but the main point of it all is that Jesus knows the end and that he promises to never leave us. And even when it feels like we're all alone in a world that's falling apart, he's still there. I want to tell you guys a story. So, when I was about your age, my family and I went on a 2-day whitewater rafting trip, and it was so much fun. But at the start of the second day, our whitewater rafting guide sat down with us and said, "Now, today, at the very beginning of our day, we have a set of rapids called the meat grinder." And she says, "It's called the meat grinder for a reason. It's this long set of rapids. I've swum it before. I don't want to swim it again. You guys don't want to swim it. Trust me, let's all just stay in the boat, do what we're supposed to do, and get down these things, and then we'll have fun for the rest of the day. But these are the rapids that you really don't want to mess with." And so I bet you can guess what happened at the very beginning of these rapids. So we get in the boat, we're all going along, we're paddling, and I look over and I see us starting to go sideways. And there's this big rock that we're coming up to. And I saw it coming. So I was like, I hunkered down, right? Like I go down like this and I brace myself on the edges because I'm like, I know we're going to hit. Sure enough, we hit. And it's, we hit. And when I look up, everyone was gone. It was just me and the boat. And the boat was, this raft was kind of wrapped around this rock. And you can imagine like little me sitting in this boat, and this little raft the water was going up and over it. And of course, since I was in it, it was starting to go up and over me, and it was starting to sink because the force of the water was pushing it down. And I looked around and I saw this rock that we hit. And I calmly stepped up onto this rock. And the rock was just high enough out of the water that there was it was high enough and no water was coming over it. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I found myself in a safe place on solid, dry ground, and all around me were these roaring rapids that were dangerous and loud and scary, but I wasn't scared because I was safely standing on this rock in the middle of it all. And for the moment, there was nothing that the water could do to me because I was standing in the safety of this rock. And I feel a little like it's the same thing with these days where God saw this coming, and he saw lots of other things coming, and it's like he says, "Here, step onto this rock and you'll be safe in the middle of all this danger." And I hope that you guys find peace and safety in God like I did on that day on the river, because God is still all powerful. He's still in control and he still cares for you. So I put together a few videos that I and some of my church members have been working on over the quarantine. And I really hope that you guys enjoy them. I hope that you're blessed by them. And I hope that through all this, you guys have a growing relationship with God that you can hold on to, and you will find safety in the middle of all kinds of chaos. God bless. See you guys later. Bye.
Ladies and gentlefolk, attend your ear to my tale, for it changed me life, and it may change yours too. It had been many months since I had last seen another soul. I forded rivers, crossed snow-covered mountains, and braved a dense forest filled with ferocious beasts. I developed an inconvenient sore throat, excuse me, and somehow managed to pick up a strange accent that comes and goes and changes at will. I was beginning to wonder if I'd wandered beyond the bounds of humanity when one day I crested a hill to see in the distance a small church. Weary from my journey, yet invigorated by the prospects of once again worshipping with God's people, I approached the church, and that is where my tale begins.
Hello? Hello in there! Hello, worshippers of this small country church. I have come a long distance to worship with you today. Can you please unlock the door so I can come inside?
No one's here!
What do you mean there's no one here? I can hear you inside.
No one's here. Go home. No one's here. Go home.
I can hear you.
We'll talk to you from the balcony.
It was already established in the first shot that there was not a balcony at this church. You can't add one now.
We're not having church here this week. Yeah!
Ugh, whatever. Could you please explain to me why there isn't church today?
Social distancing. Yeah!
But God's people can't just not meet. There has to be church.
The two. Yeah!
What two?
The you two. Yeah! On the ground next to you. Yeah!
This? This looks more like a V-tube to me.
I don't know.
Well, what do I do with it?
Look in it. Yeah!
It's a miracle! It's a miracle!
You can take it wherever you want. Yeah! Then you'll always have church with you. Yeah!
How doth this holy relic work, O wise one?
I don't know. I didn't invent it.
And that, brothers and sisters, is how I came to discover that I will never again be without me church. Unless there's no Wi-Fi or cellular service.
Hadassah was an orphan girl. She sat alone on some rocks near her house. Because there was tears in her eyes, she couldn't see the blue of the sky or the green of the grass or the yellow gold of the flowers. Mordecai, Hadassah's cousin, came to her house. "Come, Hadassah," he said, "come live at my house." So Hadassah gathered up her clothes and she tied them into a bundle, and she was pleased to be going with cousin Mordecai to live with his family in the town of Shushan.
Thanks, Mordecai.
Now Hadassah could see the blue of the skies, the green of the grass, the yellow gold of the flowers, because there was no longer tears in her eyes. Mordecai worked for the king of Persia. Every day he sat in the gate of the king's palace and answered the questions of the people who came asking for help. Hadassah sometimes carried lunch to Mordecai as he sat at the king's gate.
Here's your lunch, Mordecai. I brought you carrots and apples and veggies and fruits.
Hadassah grew to be a very pretty girl. She was such a happy, helpful girl that Mordecai said she was like a shining light. Mordecai said, "No longer shall your name be Hadassah, it shall be Esther, which means a star." Esther liked her new name. Forever and always she would try to shine as a star.
Esther.
Over and over, she said her new name. Now it happened that the king of Persia was planning to choose a queen.
Gather all of the prettiest maidens in the whole land. Then I made choose a queen.
Esther was one of the maidens called to the palace. Mordecai watched them as they came through the gate. He thought there was none so beautiful as Esther. Maiden after maiden was presented to the king. All of them were beautiful. But when the king saw Esther, the shining star, he said,
Esther.
with his own hands, the king placed a crown on Esther's head. Queen Esther went to live in the queen's house, in the palace gardens of the king. From her window, she could see cousin Mordecai as he sat at the king's gate. Esther read the king's list of palace rules. There was one very strict rule. It said that no one must go in before the king unless uninvited. If anyone did go in without being invited, that person would be put to death unless the king held out the golden scepter to him. A terrible thing happened in the land of Persia. A law was passed that on a certain day, all of God's people would be killed. Mordecai sent a messenger to Queen Esther telling her, "You must go before the king and ask that God's people be saved."
I should not go before the king. No, I cannot. I could be killed.
Mordecai again sent a messenger to Esther saying, "Don't be afraid. Maybe God has let you be a queen for such a time as this."
All right, 3 days of prayer and then I'll go to the king.
Esther and her maids prayed in the queen's house. Mordecai and his friends prayed in his house. All through the land of Persia, God's people prayed.
Dear God, please help us not to die, and please help me to be brave when I'm going to the palace.
Carefully, Queen Esther made herself ready to go in before the king. She used her sweetest smelling perfumes and put on her prettiest royal robes. Then she and her maids said a last prayer, and slowly they walked down the hall to the throne room of the king. The king heard someone coming. He scowled. Who would dare to come before him uninvited? Take that person away, he was about to say when he saw that it was lovely Queen Esther who had come to see him. The king smiled at her, and he held out his scepter. Esther came near and touched the scepter.
Esther, I'll give you every head if you want. I was hoping you would come to a special dinner at my house.
So the king and his right-hand man Haman came to eat with Esther. Esther served them the most amazing, delicious food, and the king loved the food.
This food is amazing food. Thank you. I'm so glad you loved it. I wanted to talk to you about the new law that says all Israelites shall be killed on a day. The Israelites are my people. I'm an Israelite.
And so it came about that the king made a new law, and God's people were saved. Messengers on mules and camels and horses and other people ran. They raced around the land spreading the glad news, and God's people shouted for joy. Perhaps the happiest of all was Queen Esther. Once Hadassah, the orphan girl. Then Esther, the
David was a shepherd boy who lived long ago in the land of Israel. His job was to keep wild animals away from his sheep. One day, a lion appeared and started to attack his sheep. David chased the lion away and kept his sheep safe. At this time, the Israelites lived under the rule of the Philistines. One day, David heard that a Philistine giant named Goliath was threatening the Israelite army. Goliath was almost 10 feet tall. He said that if anyone fought him and beat him, the Israelites could be free. No Israelite soldier was brave enough to fight Goliath.
Don't find me scary, Dad.
David believed God could help him defeat the giant, so he volunteered to go to battle with Goliath. He also heard that if he won the battle, he would receive, as a reward, King Saul's beautiful daughter for his bride. King Saul was worried about David trying to fight the huge giant. He told David to wear his armor for protection. He gave David his armor. He even put on David his own helmet.
There's no way I can fight in this armor. It's much too big for me.
David told King Saul that he couldn't wear his armor, but that God would protect him. David prayed and asked God to protect him. Then David got his slingshot and went and found 5 small, smooth stones. David approached the huge, menacing giant. When Goliath saw him, he shouted, "Am I a dog that you come to fight me with sticks and stones?"
Am I a dog? So you can fight me with sticks and stones? I don't even need my helmet.
David put a stone in his slingshot and let it go. The stone hit the giant right in the middle of his forehead, and the giant fell down dead. David beat Goliath with God's help. God can help all of us fight all of our giants. We don't ever need to be afraid. Just remember the story of David, the brave shepherd boy, and how he beat the giant Goliath.
Hello all, and thank you for watching
this 2020 virtual Redwood area camp meeting video.
We are striving to reach the needed YouTube subscriptions
so that we can change the name to something a human would understand.
Please visit the website for
what is coming up.
Don't forget to sign up for
announcements on the website.
Please consider helping us with
our budget needs for this year,
so we can be ready for camp next year.
Please keep our camp
in your prayers
as we traverse
these trying times.
We can always use
your help at the camp
If you want to come
and put your skills to use.
Once again, thank you so much
for joining us, and we look forward
to getting together again in 2021.